Welcome to Mixed Needs Mama podcast, where we talk about parenting mixed needs families and building a family culture that honors God and every member in our family. We're so glad you've joined us today, and I'm your host, a mixed needs mama myself, Terrie Hellard-Brown, and I help Christian parents in mixed needs homes move from survival mode to sustainable peace. I'm so thankful you're here today, and I just want to start by asking, have you ever blown it with your kids? This episode is an honest confession that even with adult kids, we can still make mistakes. And I did a good one this last week. So it was a very interesting day. First of all, I will start by saying it was the perfect storm. I had jet lag. I was exhausted. I hadn't slept well. And I woke up, and the first thing I did was look at my messages. We have a family chat, and they had been chatting. The chat had turned into an argument between my two daughters. And I didn't read the whole conversation. I just jumped in with my 2 cents before I read it all. Now, that's not like me. I normally would never do that, but I think because I was so tired, I wasn't thinking clearly and made a bad choice. And it was just bad. I felt like the worst parent ever. I had to apologize. I had to apologize a lot for what I had done, because what I realized later, they pointed it out to me, was that the argument had already been resolved. Everything was cool, but I didn't see that part. So I jumped in. Now, the good news about this is I learned a few things. Sometimes I think God takes us through things when we're trying to teach and help others so that we can help others too. I hope that my crazy experience will help you in the future not to make the same mistakes that I did. So let me just share with you some of the situation that was going on, what was happening. First of all, I've mentioned before, 3 neurodivergent children and 1 neurotypical child. The neurotypical child has kind of a hot temper, and so she can blow up easily. But like I said, they resolved it and they got through it and they were fine. And I just needed to read the whole thing and figure it out. I have another child of my 3 that are on the neurodivergent side of things who's a peacemaker. And so he gets really upset by these conversations and these arguments, whereas I am willing to argue about anything, because to me, arguing and talking through things is a way to gain understanding, to resolve conflict. I don't mean arguing like screaming and throwing things, but discussing things and a little bit of arguing with emotion too, but not out of control, that we can come to resolutions and we can solve things. So I've always been one not afraid to talk about anything in our family. And I've mentioned that before on other podcasts, because as parents, we've got to be bold and brave when it comes to talking about anything with our kids. We've got to be willing to attack any topic and discuss it with our kids. It's so vital and so important that we do that. Of course, hopefully we do it with some sleep and a sane mind and not when we're emotional and tired and grumpy. But we do need to be willing to argue through anything and try to keep it as unemotional as possible. And I can give you some tips and tricks for doing that, even though I did not do that the other day, for how to do that. The other thing I want to point out before I jump into my little pointers for today is to recognize that we all blow it at times. Thank God we have reconciliation and we have ways to reconcile. My children are so amazingly forgiving and so gracious, and I just appreciate them so much. They have been just the best when it comes to these kinds of things, to reconciling, to holding our family together no matter what. So I think that's amazing, and I think that's good. And I was able to calm down and be okay too. But then I had a really extended conversation with my one daughter and really hashed through a lot of things that we needed to talk about as well. So the good thing that came out of this for me, especially, was it brought up some unresolved conflict that we haven't talked about, we haven't argued through. And that was amazing. Not always easy to deal with. It's always a little painful when you're dealing with conflict, But oh my goodness, so healing and so important. But it was kind of interesting that this happened because at the same time I was working on getting ready to record a 7-day challenge for bringing peace back into your home. And I have an argument with my kids that it's like, it was just weird. It was so wild, but God used it, and I think it was a good thing in the end. So I want to tell you my pointers for how I would suggest we handle situations when we as the parent have our meltdown, or we have our temper tantrum, or whatever it is we want to call it, where we just blow it with our kids. The first thing is when we're approaching any situation, before we mess up, we can prevent the whole meltdown, blow up situation if, first of all, we prayed. If I had stopped long enough to pray, I think God would have calmed me down. And also, he would have advised me. The Holy Spirit would have just directed me to read the whole conversation before reacting. That's the second thing, is whatever the argument is that we're stepping into between our children or between us and our children, we need to see the whole situation. So take a step back, look at the whole situation, make sure we understand what's really going on. I don't know if you ever had this, but my mom would hear me and my sister talking and we were playing or having a good time. And she would come in and ground us because we were arguing, and we weren't arguing. She didn't take the time to really listen to what was going on. She reacted. And that's what I did with this conversation in the family chat. I reacted rather than finding out what the real situation was, seeing that they, as wonderful adults, had already reconciled and resolved the problem. So we need to pray first. We need to let the Holy Spirit speak to our hearts and calm us down and remind us what we need to do. The second thing we need to do in any situation with conflict is look at the whole picture and understand what's really going on instead of reacting to what we think is going on. So that's the second thing. And of course, in the process of all this, humbling ourselves. If we aren't humble, if we have a chip on our shoulder, or we're filled with pride and think we're right and they're wrong and we're going to prove that, we're never going to have reconciliation. We're never going to have peace in our home. We're going to have a bunch of angry, conflicted people, and we don't want that. So we need to be humble with each other and loving with each other. So first pray, look at the whole situation, and then have a humble and loving heart. The fourth thing that we did was we agreed after the fact to handle conflict a little more biblically. First of all, my one daughter had gone to the other daughter privately in a private chat, and somehow it got brought into the family chat and became like public in our family. If the two girls had continued to deal with this privately, it wouldn't have been a big deal. They might have argued a little bit. They would have reconciled. It would be done. My sons would not have been involved in it. My husband and I would not have been involved in it. But because she probably just made a mistake and accidentally posted in the family chat, then it brought everybody in, and everybody has to share their 2 cents. And I had to share mine without ever realizing what was going on. So that was the other thing. So from now on, we've all agreed if we have a conflict with someone in our family or anywhere else, that we will go to them privately first. Now, if there needs to be some sort of help or intervention or a little more involvement with other people, then that comes later. Certainly not first. The first step is to go privately to that person. Prayer, looking at the whole situation and understanding what's really going on, humbling ourselves and having a loving heart, and then remember to go privately to the person you have the conflict with. And then after the fact, the other thing that was really wonderful was we didn't stop there. I mean, they could have been so angry at me and walked away. I could have said whatever I shouldn't have said and gotten really upset and just stayed in meltdown mode. And I really was kind of in meltdown mode because I wasn't thinking clearly. With being so tired, it just was not good. Like I said, it was a perfect storm. But I made it a point to talk to my children. I apologized publicly in the private chat, in our family chat, and asked for them to forgive me and that I was really sorry for what I did. That's definitely something we need to think about and be willing to do. A lot of parents, that I've known do not feel you should apologize to your children. I've even known whole families that think you should not apologize. And I grew up in that kind of a family. My sister would always say, I don't think she still believes this, but this is what she said when we were kids. And it's a quote from The Love Story. Loving someone means never having to say you're sorry, which is silly and not true. That was how I grew up. And I know other parents have that same feeling. Well, that is not biblical, I don't think, at all. We do not lose our children's respect when we show them respect. And when we apologize to someone, we are showing our children respect. They're worth our apology. They're worth needing their forgiveness. We give them personhood, agency, individuality when we apologize to them. We give them value. We show them that we care and that it matters, that we've hurt them. When we don't apologize, it's like, it's okay if I hurt you because we're family. And that's a privilege we have as family members. I mean, I don't think any of us would say that, but that's really kind of what we're saying by our actions. So never be afraid to apologize to your kids if you've really messed up, if you've had a meltdown, if you've been irrational like I was the other day. Let them know, Mom's exhausted. I shouldn't have reacted the way I did. With my kids, I said I should have read the whole conversation before making any comment. After I made my comments, that I shouldn't have been so harsh. And so I apologized and I admitted that I just messed up. With our neurotypical daughter, I told you that some things came out. She's the one I had the extended conversation with away from the family chat. And with her, we got to talking about all kinds of things. And we tried very hard to not make her feel ignored or left out. And that's why I have such a heart for what we're doing here with the Mixed Needs Mama podcast and the whole family, is that our whole family has their needs met and that we become a whole family in Christ and in our relationships with each other. Well, we've done, I think, a fairly good job, but not perfect. And in the process of all this mess that came to the surface the other day, is she was able to tell me some other times that she has felt blamed for things that she didn't feel she deserved. And it showed me that I still have a little bit of a tendency to put too much weight on her and too many expectations on her. And this month in January, that's one of the things we're really talking about. We're starting, as we're developing our family culture for the year and the revolution in our family culture that we want to do in 2026, we're starting with expectations. And so this was so timely and helpful for me to have that conversation with her and see where she still has some hurt, where she feels like our expectations are too high for her and not high enough for her siblings. And so we talked through a lot of that. And one of the things that I was able to share with her is she doesn't always see what I say to her siblings because I go to them privately. And so she thought I was just letting them get away with everything and never confronted them, I guess because I didn't confront them in front of her. And I said, no, I just deal with it privately because I feel like that's important to preserve our children's dignity, to preserve our integrity, that we go and talk to them privately whenever possible. That helped her to know that I do have high standards for all four kids. And I feel like I try to hold them to what they should be and are capable of doing. They don't always do it. And that's life. They're adults. That's the difference here between some of you who are listening and me, is my kids are adults now. And so navigating adulthood and helping them navigate adulthood together is a challenge. And so, there were challenges when they were little, and we're still dealing with some of the same challenges today. And that's so disheartening for me to say to you. They're the same, but they're different because they're at a different stage in life. But with neurodiverse children, you're still parenting all the way through. I guess with all children you are, but it's different with your neurotypical children. They become more independent. They have their own homes, their own businesses and jobs and lives and significant others. And with my neurodivergent children, they don't have any of that yet. And so it's different. The roles that we play as parents, we are still parenting, and with our neurodivergent children more than we would be with a neurotypical child usually. And so we need to accept that and know how to handle that with grace and integrity and dignity and with peace. This whole situation just played right into everything that I was working on and preparing and praying about with starting this new podcast and with preparing the 7-day challenge and our January 16th workshop. Everything is just like personified in this whole argument that we had the other day. It's so funny how God does that and helps us recognize how much we need Him and how much we need to work through and how far we have not succeeded sometimes. One of the things that also came to the surface as we were going through this experience, because I normally do not lose it like this with my kids, rarely, not that I don't ever, but rarely. So a lot came to the surface as a result. It was like shaking a bottle of soda or something. And so all the bubbles were coming to the top. And one of the things I recognized, and I didn't talk to them about this, but I realized we think of neurodivergent children as being kind of clueless, not being able to read the room or understand the emotions of the other person they're talking to. And that is mostly true. But what I see that is not true is, at least with my children, they recognize anger. That doesn't get past them. Now, if you're getting a little irritated, annoyed, that might pass by them. But if someone is angry, they know it. And if someone is angry at someone else, they may own it, even if it's not them, directed toward them. And so I think that's one of the reasons with my one son, who's a real peacemaker, that it is so difficult for him to see angry people, to see people arguing, because I don't know, I don't think he feels responsible for it in any way, but he wants to make it better. He's very uncomfortable with that. And I find with my daughter, my oldest daughter, that she just shuts down. You want to make her shut down, get angry with her. And she will immediately just, it's like she pulls within herself. And you can't talk her out of it. She's got to get past that, as you well know with your children, past the meltdown. My other son is the same way. Anger really affects our neurodivergent children. And I think it's because they are so overstimulated to begin with and are being bombarded with so many things, whether it's visual, auditory, or what, they're being bombarded constantly. Their nervous system is being bombarded, and then someone brings in anger. And it's like they can't process that with everything else. Anger is such a big emotion. And if they feel anger, it's pretty much the same. They just want to make it good and go on. And so making sure that our children are okay and that they understand what apologies and reconciliation truly are, and that they're not harboring anger, they're not just trying to smooth it over so they can feel better. That's so important. So we have to check and see how our kids are doing. It was really amazing that same day that we had the big blow up in the morning, we have Bible study online together a few hours after that. And so several hours later, we're having Bible study together, and we had a great time. It was really good. And so at the end of Bible study, my kids were just left in the chat room in the Zoom, and I purposely wanted them in there. There were 3 of the 4 there. And I said, I want to make sure, are we okay? Is everything okay? And we talked a little bit more, but they all agreed, we're good now. Everything's good. And then later I talked to my other son too. But I wanted to make sure, because I didn't want them just to smooth it over and have any hard feelings. I didn't want them to question what was going on or how I felt. I wanted everything to be open and honest. And I especially double checked with my daughter that I had been so harsh with to make sure things were good. So when we have blown it, when we have a meltdown, and when we make mistakes in the way that we handle our parenting, it's not the end of the world. It is something that has to be dealt with. And so we need to be willing to humble ourselves and apologize and let our children know how much we love them, even when we melt down or blow it. So that was what I gleaned from this. We can use the negative just like God uses anything in our life and turn it to good for those of us who love him if we give him control of that. And I think that's what I tried to do with this, is say, God, I blew it. Now what do I do? And of course, I needed to apologize, but I loved that he used this to bring some things, some hurts to the surface that I had not realized were there. And we were able to talk through it. Do you have a story like mine? Do you have a situation where you've blown it and you just need to know how to proceed from here, how to help your children handle the situation? You can put your comments or questions below the show notes. There's a place for your comments. And I just want to encourage you. Our children are amazing. They're resilient. And if they know Jesus, especially, they're forgiving. And even if they don't know Jesus, they love us and they will usually forgive us. They know that we make mistakes too. To honestly approach them and let them know that we make mistakes is an important thing. Because I think sometimes my kids think that we handle everything just fine and that we can handle the hard times and not get our feathers ruffled. That was part of the perfect storm, was we also were going through a very stressful situation that just is frustrating and we've got to deal with it. And so I was stressed. That put me in a situation to act irrationally and to lose my temper, to let my children know that, yeah, I messed up. This is how we reconcile. This is how we make things right with each other. We are discipling our kids through what we model and through our attitudes and actions. And we're also helping them to understand how much they matter to us, that we don't ever want there to be something between us. We want to deal with it and we want to reconcile. If your kids know that, you can get through anything. That would be my first thing, is pray, seek the Lord, make sure your heart is right with him and with your kids, and then just plow in and ask for forgiveness and talk it through. Be ready for those little bubbles coming to the surface, because sometimes they do, and we have to deal with them without defensiveness, responding in love, and with a desire for reconciliation. As we end today, I just want to say welcome again to our brand new podcast, Mixed Needs Mama. We've changed the name. I should have mentioned this before. The first couple episodes were called Anchored Parenting, and we found out there were a whole bunch of other ministries called Anchored Parenting, which we searched before we chose the name, and they didn't show up. And then all of a sudden, boom, our whole browser is just full of them. And I'm like, I don't understand. What's the difference? But anyway, we must have done something wrong in our search the first time. But the other part of that is I didn't think Anchored Parenting really tells what we're doing. Our hearts are for mixed needs family, where you have neurodivergent, neurotypical children being raised under the same roof in the same family. Maybe the mom or dad is neurodivergent as well. That's what we have in our family. So you're dealing with the neurodivergent, neurotypical situations. You're dealing with other disabilities along the way, many times, other medical needs because of the different birth defects and things that are going on. It can cause such stress and such chaos in our families. We need to let God bring peace back to our families. So that's one of our main missions and goals with the whole family, is to help bring peace back to our homes. Our homes are not going to look like your average family, but it will be a successful, a happy, a joyful, peaceful home as we work to revolutionize our family cultures in 2026. I'm so glad you joined us today, and I'm so glad to be doing this podcast. I hope that we can work together and walk together through this journey of parenting mixed needs families. And I pray that God blesses you and helps you as we continue on together. Before we go, I want to tell you about something I created specifically for the parent who feels like they're barely holding it together. Maybe you're tired of yelling at your kids. Maybe you keep shutting down emotionally because it feels safer than engaging. Or maybe you're just constantly bracing, waiting for the next meltdown, the next conflict, or the next thing to go wrong. I've been there, and I know that when you're in that space, the last thing you need is another long program or another book to read. That's why I created the 7 Days to Fewer Blowups at Home challenge. This is a 7-day reset, just 7 minutes a day, focused on helping you, the parent, reclaim peace in your own heart and mind. Because here's the truth: we can't lead our families well when we're running on empty, reactive, and internally chaotic. This challenge isn't about behavior management. It's not about controlling our kids. It's about anchoring ourselves so that we can respond instead of react, so we can lead with clarity instead of chaos, so we can actually experience peace in our homes again. You get 7 days of focused, practical content that will help us shift the way we show up in our homes. Head to terriehellard.brown.com and grab the 7-day challenge. Let's do this together.